Hey everyone, and welcome to this month's episode of Princess Auto's See It Work, the show where you get to see our products live in action. I'm Matt, and this is Derek, and on today's episode, we're going to be talking about heaters from HeatStar. If this is your first time joining us today, or you've been with us before, please feel free to ask us a question in the comments section, and you could be entered to win today's prize. Today's prize is actually going to be this 38,000 BTU propane heater we have here. We would like to thank our vendors here, Enerco, for supplying us these HeatStar heaters today, and also being able to supply us with the prize that we're giving away today as well. So Derek, I think it's time to jump right into it. Let's talk about these heaters a little bit here.
Absolutely. So what we've got is a couple of our forced air heaters. Obviously, we've got a big guy here that's going to run on kerosene, diesel, jet fuel, etc.
Okay.
And these guys here, we're going to run on propane. Only propane on this guy. Very similar kind of situations. They're both going to need extension cords and 12 or 120 volt power, I should say, to get the fans and the burners going. And other than that, they're reasonably portable. Take them on and off the job site, in and out of sheds, buildings, barns, that kind of thing. And scale them to the size of the job you have, and you'll have good luck with them.
Excellent. Yeah. So we're looking at propane and kerosene heaters, but what's the big difference between propane and kerosene fuel types?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously you've got your kerosene, your diesel are going to be in liquid form, and liquid propane is technically liquid, but as it comes out of the tank, it's going to, the vapor, the gas is going to be bubbling out, and that's what's actually going to burn here in the heater. So they're similar but different. But both of them, I'd like to mention right off the hop, they're going to emit carbon monoxide, right, as an exhaust emission. So we want to be very safe, with what we're doing and where we're working in the environment. Fresh air source, approximately per 1,000 BTU, you're going to need fresh air incoming of 1 cubic inch. So obviously, depending on the scale of the heater, open a door, open a window, vent, have fans moving, and also we have a selection at the store of carbon monoxide detectors. So these guys are really important to have, in a house just to start or shop, but also, when you're using these kind of heaters, really safe to have these guys, because these will detect it far before you're going to detect it, and hopefully keep you safe.
Yeah, absolutely. We're always looking for safety first.
That's right.
Around here.
Yep.
So well, we've talked a little bit about the heaters. Should we maybe try to fire one up here?
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe
we'll start
look at
with
the kerosene unit?
Kerosene one for sure. I'll trade spots with you here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it's pretty straightforward. Out of the box, you've got your full frame here. There is a guard that we've taken off. Basically, it's going to be coming out the front just to kind of keep the area clear within about a foot or so for any imminent contact with the heat, the element on the end. When it's running though, 6 feet in the front and a few feet on either side, just to have anything that's combustible, any kind of fabric or wood or anything like that, just to keep the area safe, right? Keep it clean. It's got flat free wheels, so for overland travel, rolls nice and easy. You'll never have a flat. Cold air tubes, they don't always work together well. These guys, you'll never have a problem. So we'll jump right into it. We've got our power source connected. There's just a small plug here on the back, right? And it's got a tap on the back side, so you can always plug another extension cord in to go, for a tool or a light on the other end.
Very nice.
It's going to draw about 5 amps maximum, so you can run another tool on that 15 amp circuit if you have, or a 20 amp circuit. And we've got a fresh tank of fuel in here. It's kerosene. We're going to follow the instructions here. So basically, we're going to turn the heat register down, the thermostat down to 0. We're going to turn it on. We're going to turn the heat all the way up. We'll hear the igniter, we'll hear the fan kick in, and there we go.
There it goes.
So it's running. That's really all there is to it.
Oh yeah, it's working.
Nice and warm. Here, I'll turn that towards the camera. I don't know if you can see it. We're looking for an orange, cherry red to orange cone at the very end of it when it's running. And you can set the thermostat down to anywhere in between, all the way down to the low setting on it. Let's turn it off there, make it a little bit easier for everybody to hear. So yeah, there's a full range thermostat on it. You can set it to high, set it to medium, set it to low, and what's going to happen at that point, once the temperature reaches the desired setting, it's going to shut off, and then when it drops back down, it cools off, it's going to kick back in. So you can kind of, do what you're doing, do your work, and it'll keep up the heat.
Excellent. That sounds great. Well, we tried out the kerosene heater for a bit. I think we're going to go to some questions now and see what we can answer here.
Absolutely.
So we got one here from Perry Albert. Will using a propane heater inside create an increase in humidity?
There will be some humidity with both the heaters, but of course that's all dependent on the the air, the ambient humidity in the air as well. So if there's any project you're doing, I know in some cases with concrete curing and things like that, there's a preference of fuel, but it all depends on what you're doing. So painting, those kind of things, you want to kind of do some research on that before you start.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes sense. We got a question here from Dave. How long does the kerosene last? So let's say, full tank on this one?
So this model here, I believe we're about around 50 to 52 liters at maximum square footage of about 9,400 square foot. It'll run for about 9 to 9.5 hours.
Wow, that's definitely a long burn time. Got another question here from Tara. How many burning hours out of a 20-pound propane tank?
20 propane tank, I believe we're going to get about 12 hours at about 1,000 square foot output on this guy here. So this is kind of that mid-range in the 30, to they say 50,000 BTU output, where they're going to say a 20-pound tank is kind of the tank to start with, and then above that you're going to be suggested a 40-pound tank, and then of course you can go larger as well to 100-pound for a longer burn time.
Right, yeah, and some of the bigger heaters with bigger BTUs
That's right.
will need that as well.
Exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. Got a question here from Brian. Does the kerosene diesel heater produce a smell?
There is a very slight smell. There can be some soot, if you will. They do burn quite clean, but there can be some soot over time, and of course, depending on the type of ventilation you have. But realistically, with the fresh air you'll have incoming, it's not overpowering. But there is a smell associated with it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Another question here, do you need to have these heaters plugged in for them to work?
You do, yeah. Both of them will have the cords on the back, extension cords. Like we've got this guy here, needs to plug into a standard 115, 120 outlet. And that's gonna light the igniter and keep the fan going. So that's important, obviously fan forced heat, right? We need to move the heat out.
All right.
Yeah.
Got another question here from Guy. Where is the burnt emissions ventilated?
Out the front of them. Both of the units, the emission's going to come out the front.
Excellent, excellent. We got a great question here from Darcy asking, how do you clean this out and what is the type of maintenance needed?
Sure.
So, yeah.
Well, that's an excellent question. We were going to touch on that. So I'll start with the propane one because there's not a lot of maintenance involved in that. Basically, what I like to do at home, I like to keep mine clean, compressed air to clean it out if there's any dust buildup on it, and I keep them bagged in the winter or in the summertime in the off season. The big thing you're going to check on this is the condition of the hose. Make sure the hose isn't checked or cracked, any scuffing or rubbing that might have happened when it was being transported or stored, and just make sure the O-ring on the end of the POL fitting for the tank is nice, the O-ring's in good shape and present, and that's really it. There's a little bit more involved in the kerosene diesel type heaters. Very straightforward. It's kind of a set regimented maintenance that they'll be suggesting. Every day, obviously, you're going to look at it and make sure everything looks in good condition, especially if it's being transported back or forth from a job site. But about 500 hours is an approximate kind of an overall maintenance on it. So you're going to clean out the filters. There's an intake air filter. There's a fuel filter in the tank, so you're going to check that. You're going to check the fuel line and the air lines just to make sure they're not checked or rubbing or cracked. They dry out over time. And same thing, compressed air, keep everything clean. There's an igniter inside this one, obviously. You're going to check and make sure it's clean and the spark gap on it is set properly. And there's also a flame detector, a little autotronic eye kind of thing in there. Keep that clean and adjusted properly. Very simple. A little bit of maintenance every year is going to go a long way to keeping them, kind of ready to go in the next season.
For sure. Yeah. And all that maintenance information is in the product manuals as
well?
well?
It is, yeah, and they're online at HeatStar, and also the tech line. If you have any questions about that, they're awesome. They can help you with anything you have a question on. And realistically, other than that, the only thing I'll mention is if you're going to be using fuel in it, don't store it till the next season. Try and burn it off, or store it or use it in another application if you have a farm and you're using kerosene or diesel with something else.
Yeah, for sure.
Keep that fuel fresh.
That maintenance seems pretty propaneless, I would like to say.
Very propaneless.
The jokes may be bad, but I'm telling you, people, these heaters are not. These are some of the best top-of-the-line heaters we've seen come through here.
That's right.
So let's talk about some of these. Get another question or two on this, and then we'll move on.
Absolutely.
What about Do you need to replace the cone after using it? Does it eventually burn and wear away?
I think over a large period of time. I mean, I'd be talking years. They're quite heavy. That's the kind of the difference that we have in the HeatStar brand is the materials are a little bit thicker, a little bit heavier than we'd see in some other brands. So the longevity is there. It's something I don't think in the lifetime of the heater you'd have to concern yourself with.
For sure.
Yeah.
One more question here before we move on. Derek is asking, would these heaters work well for ice fishing?
Yeah, they would. And now obviously with that ice fishing, we want to talk about the same thing we mentioned earlier is having fresh air, right? So if you have a shack and it may or may not be quasi-insulated, as long as, there's not open windows, or no windows, I should say. But to flash, kind of the inside, if you want to put a little bit of a heater to run a little electric heater off a little generator to kind of keep the temperature steady, but to soak heat in, you could certainly use them. Just again, fresh air is really important in those kind of closed applications.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the biggest things.
Yep.
So for anybody who is just joining us today, we are talking about the heaters from HeatStar. If you do have any questions at all, please feel free to drop them in our comments section below and you could be entered to win a prize. And today's prize is going to be the 38,000 propane forced air heater.
Yeah.
So on that note, why don't we talk about this
Sure.
propane heater a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. So this guy here, like I say, maximum 38,000 BTU. It's kind of a set temperature. The larger units, similar to this, will have an adjustable dial on it, so you can go to low to high or anywhere in between. Very straightforward. Once the cord is plugged in, we'll turn on the tank. Nice slow movement on the tank valve just to make sure the tank doesn't stick or the valve doesn't have an issue. And that way the fresh air that's going through with the fan will purge any fuel out if there's any locked in there. And we have an igniter and a fuel button on the side here. And I'll turn it to the side to kind of show you when I'm starting it. And yeah, we'll give it a crack here.
That's great. Let's see this
Absolutely.
happen.
I'll move these out of the way.
For sure, yeah, don't want those burning.
Nope. All right. So we'll give it a turn here. I will plug it in. Okay. Turn on the fuel. Okay, hear that fan kick in. I'll depress the fuel, igniter. Okay, it's ignited. I'll hold on to that fuel valve for about 20 to 30 seconds as recommended. And just let everything kind of get going and warm up. This has quiet burner technology. It's about 50% quieter than most of the other brands. You can have these guys running in very close proximity to you and you will not be irritated by that sound at all. It's very quiet.
Yeah.
I have a 60,000 BTU I use in my garage because I'm not completely insulated, and you don't have any issue with that roar from a large unit that they used to have.
Yeah, I was going to say instantly you can tell the difference in sound
100%.
by the kerosene. This one's so much quieter. I feel like,
100%.
yeah, we can talk at a normal volume.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it's completely portable. Like, you've got some of the larger units will have an adjustment on the front that you can actually slide a panel down to tilt it up and down.
Nice.
Yep. So direct the heat, and then it has an anti-tip valve in it. If it tips over, it'll shut itself off. Kind of a safety feature. And on this guy here, you'd be looking at about 6 feet out the front again, and a couple feet around the front and the back and the sides, just to have free-flowing air through it. And in case there's anything hot coming in contact, or something coming in contact with a hot surface, right? We want to be safe. But yeah, and once we're done with running it, basically all we're going to do is turn off the propane. Let that kind of burn out a bit. Unplug it, and that's it.
Oh, that's pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Do the propane heaters come with the propane hose as well too?
They do. It's a 10-foot hose, which is the minimum length of hose in Canada, I should say, that's recommended. And ideally, we'll talk a bit about the propane because it's not terribly cold out today, so we're in good luck with the propane. But once you hit about minus 28, minus 30, in that range there, you're going to have issues with propane and the temperature.
Right.
So the propane isn't going to want to vaporize and supply the tank. In some cases, if it's cool out, you can use a larger tank to have more volume of gas as it's kind of making its way out of the tank. But in some cases, you might actually have to have the tank in a warm environment.
Oh, okay.
We're not supposed to store tanks inside, right? That's not safe to bring them into houses or things like that. So, a shop, if you can get another warm environment, something like that to keep the tank in, especially for, a construction site overnight or something like that, that don't leave the heaters running and it's not warm. They're going to come in the morning when it's minus 30 and a cold snap, and they might have a hard time starting that up. To that end as well, touch base on the kerosene diesel heaters is different grades of fuel for different temperatures. So as we see cooler temperatures come in, there's different grades of additives in the fuel. And when the fuel gets really cold, if it's a a warmer blend, so to speak. Let's say we buy fuel in September and we go to use it in January and it's 25 below, the fuel's going to want to gel, it's going to want to get heavy and thick, and it's not going to be very fluid. So there's anti-gel additives that we have and other places have, and you can put in there and kind of aid that to make the fuel run clean. But a real problem when it gets really cold, you'll see, oh, there's something wrong with the heater. It's not the heater. More than likely, it's either the fuel source, or the liquid, right? So it's something to keep in mind in the cold weather.
For sure, that's a great point to make.
Yeah.
So I think we should go to some more questions.
Sure.
If anybody is just joining us, we're reviewing the HeatStar line from, the heaters from our HeatStar vendor.
Yep.
If you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in our comment section. We're going to go through a few now, and who knows, maybe you'll be able to win this propane heater.
Sure.
So we have another question here from Rick Harper. Can the small unit be placed on, say, a table and be
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got kind of our 500-pound lift table here, and when I'd be testing them, at home, kind of seeing what's going on with them, I'd have them on a kind of a rolling cart. Okay. As long as it's not, directly, focused, the heat's not focused on a surface, it's the same thing as having it on the floor. As long as it's not combustible, then absolutely. So, you're in good shape. Have something steel, you're fine.
For sure.
Yep.
Tara has a question here. How long is the plug-in cord on these units?
You're about, I'd say maybe 6 to 8 inches, so an extension cord is something you're going to have. And they're like, this guy I believe is about 3 amp draw, and like I say, the larger one was about 5 amp to my recollection. A 16 gauge cord up to maybe 75 or 100 feet, and then 14 gauge, even a shorter 14 gauge cord if you had. They don't have a lot of draw, so they don't need a really heavy cord. A standard, outside rated temperature cord is fine. Yep.
Perfect, that makes sense.
Yep.
Got a question here from Scott. Which fuel burns the cleanest?
Cleanest, I would have to say the propane would burn the cleanest. It's the most efficient.
Oh,
yep.
That's great. Rick Harper asks, can the propane unit be set up to use natural gas?
No. Nope, these ones cannot. The large shop heaters that we have, the 50, 80,000 BTU units, those can be converted. There's a kit that actually comes with them. So if you happen to be off-grid or you're at a location that doesn't have natural gas supply to you, you can certainly use propane in a large storage tank. But these portable guys, strictly propane.
Yeah, that works. All right, got another question here from Dave. Does kerosene need any stabilizer to store it over winter, similar to gasoline in the wintertime?
Yep.
Or summer, sorry.
Yeah, an anti-gel, right? So something in a diesel conditioner. We have some clean flow, low sulfur and standard diesel conditioner in the stores. Something like that you can put in, and you'll have no issues with gelling or any kind of buildup or anything like that. It's going to keep everything running clean and lubricated.
Awesome.
Yep.
Another question here from Tara. She noticed that the larger one comes with wheels. Does a smaller one come with wheels, or is it light enough for someone to carry?
No, perfectly light. This guy is very light, very portable. The hose might add another 2 pounds, something like that, but easily carried around. Even the larger ones, they're quite light. The real heft of this guy, just due to the size and the nature of the fuel source, is going to be the fuel, right? So you're looking at probably 10 pounds or so a gallon of fuel, right? So if you can have let's say, I don't know, a 12 or 15 gallon tank, it's going to be heavy.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. Bruce here is asking, if you were to use one of these units for ice fishing, where would the electrical power be coming from? Would you need to bring a generator at that point?
Yeah, you need to have a small generator, or in some of the newer vehicles, right? Like some of the trucks and whatnot, you have inverters.
A power supply?
That's right.
That's true.
You can use that too.
Absolutely. Rebecca Winter here is asking, what is the diameter of the cylinder, and can you adapt it to ducting?
No, none of these will have ducting available for them. Diameter, I'd say you're probably at around 9 to 10 inches.
Okay, yep, that's great. Gordon Jr. is asking, are the fumes too heavy to turn this on in a garage with the door closed for an hour before I leave, just to help it chill off?
I'd always say some fresh air. That's only going to be, especially for the kerosene unit, you're going to get that smell. And again, you might get some, depending on what you're doing in there, if you're doing any kind of refinishing, powder coating, painting, things like that, there could be, with the fuel you're using, depending on the fuel you're using, there could be some soot or some coating left on some of the material after a long time running. It's really meant for kind of that fresh air application that's going to be, allowing it to vent as well, right? It does need fresh air to burn, so that's important.
Yeah, for sure. Got another great question here from Jax Bailey. How hot does this unit get, and is it safe around kids and pets?
Well, like anything that throws heat, we'd want to be cautious, keep an eye on them, right? We don't want to walk away and leave a stove running or a fuel burning element running like this. Heat, I mean, you'd be into, hundreds to thousands of degrees depending on the size of the unit. So obviously, especially with something that you've got an open flame in, or a hot surface like on the very front, the cone, you wouldn't want to have anybody being able to touch that, right? You want to be the same kind of thing as a stove or a barbecue. You want to keep an eye on the kids or the dog.
Yeah, for sure. Greg Smith here is asking, for the smaller heater, how far away do items have to be?
6 foot out the front and a couple of feet, 2 or 3 feet around the outside and the back is kind of the best bet. Some of the shop heaters have close quarter for ceiling and wall mount, close quarter proximity to walls and ceilings and things like that. But of course, the outlet is going to have to be unencumbered and free air, right?
Yeah, right. You're going to want to make sure you get fresh air and nothing else burns.
Yep,
for sure. Scott McNutt here is asking, is there a thermostat on the small propane unit?
Nope, the small one is fixed. The larger units will have a thermostat or a dial to control that. So it won't shut off automatically, but you can set it to a low range or a high range, or if you feel that it's warm enough, but you want to keep it going, if you're going to have a door open for a few minutes or something just to kind of keep a charge of heat in, you can turn it back up and then turn it back down accordingly.
Okay. Yeah. And Ken Hines here asks a great question. Would you need to vent a 22 by 20 foot outdoor garage, or can you just have the man door open? Would that be able to vent it well enough?
That would be a lot of ventilation, honestly.
Awesome,
because if you consider 1,000 BTUs, looking at about a cubic, or I should say a square inch of fresh air, a man door is going to be plenty, right? So that's a great situation. If you have a big enough heater, you'll be able to do a good amount of heat soak into that to be able to make it comfortable, and then you could subsequently use a smaller electric heater to kind of keep the temperature at bay.
Yeah, for sure. Yep. Well, I think we're ready to fire up some more units, but by all means, if you have some more questions, please feel free to send them into the comment section.
Yeah.
But let's turn these on again and
all right.
see how they work.
We'll fire up this guy here because this is the quietest one, then we'll fire up the big one, and you'll see the difference in the temperature, or the sound you're going to get out of them there. All right, so plug that in. Turn the propane back on. All right, and we go fuel, spark. Let that burn for a second. Okay, that one's running. I'll trade places with you here.
Wonderful.
That one's already plugged in.
Oh, nice and toasty. I like that.
So we're going to turn stat all the way up, turn it on. We'll hear the igniter, we'll hear the fan, ignition. And we're rolling.
There it goes.
Yep. So you can see the difference when that one running, very quiet. Obviously, larger unit, more heat, bigger fan, bigger unit. It's going to be noisier, but still, you can work around it. It's a very low tone. It's not high pitched or squealing or anything like that.
For sure. Yeah, you can even feel the air difference coming off this unit as opposed to that one. It's just tremendous.
Yeah, and then of course larger units, I believe we have into 125,000 BTU in propane. So
Oh, that's great. Yeah, these things work fantastic.
They do. Yeah. I'll turn this one on. And they do suggest, let's say we had that running for half an hour, something like that. If it happens to hit a temperature and you're comfortable with it, turn it off, wait 15 minutes, let it all cool off, and in case there's an overheat situation, there is kind of a temperature a sensing switch in there. If it feels that it's too heat in the environment for the heater, it'll shut off. And again, if it shuts off on its own, for safety's sake, let it cool off for about 15 minutes or so, then you can safely start it back up and just continue on with what you're doing.
Hey, that sounds great. Well, I gotta say, Derek, unfortunately, I missed lunch before shooting this.
Okay.
So I'd say before we turn this off, I think I might have to just cook myself up a little something here.
All right.
Got a hot dog ready to go. So
Here,
I think while we look at a few more questions,
I'll let you
get this thing cooking here.
Yeah.
And we'll look at a few more things here. Rick Harper noticed that there's no shield on the front of this propane one as opposed to the cone on the kerosene. So why is that?
Well, the burner's set farther back in that, so the flame is really only going to be around that burner. So the opportunity for flame to come out the front is just not there. You've got your hot dog almost directly in front of that opening there, and it's not scorching or burning. So everything's kind of sunken back, where the flame is so large in here, it's directing out the front. That cone is basically there to kind of direct the heat out, for the burner. So just a little bit different in the way they're built.
For sure. Troy Wilson is asking about the igniters. Are they warranted and easy to change? Does Princess Auto have access to these parts?
Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome.
Any part that's available for these guys, we can get for you if you need to. Yep.
That's good. That's good. And Tara's asking, yeah, the propane one or even the kerosene one, can either of them run off a generator?
Absolutely. Either of them can run off a generator, 120 volts, like I say, 3 amp approximately, 5 amp, really low output. You don't need anything fancy, a little tiny inverter, 1,000, 1,500 watts, something like that would do it. Absolutely.
For sure.
Yep.
And here, for Rick Harper is asking too, is there only one speed for the fans on these units?
Yeah, so the fan speed on this is set, right? It's just directed to that. And of course with the temperature variant that you have on it, it's basically just giving you more or less heat. But the fan is going to be static, and the same as this. So the fan is just going to be pumping out at the same rate. It's only the temperature that can be adjusted.
For sure.
Yep.
All right. Well, I think that's going to be about it for today. I would like to thank all of you for joining us today while we talked about the heater line from HeatStar. It was an absolutely great time. I had a blast here.
Yep.
So we do have a winner for the propane heater, and that is Darci Paice. Yeah, Darci, so congratulations on winning the propane heater today.
Right.
So again, we'd like to thank all of you for joining us. We'd also like to say thank you to our vendor Enerco, who supplied us these fantastic HeatStar heaters today, and with the prize as well. So we're about to wrap this up. Did you bring a hot dog bun on this by any chance?
I don't have any buns. I thought you were going to bring the buns.
I didn't bring any buns, no. I didn't think we were going to bring
Where
any
are we going to get a hot dog bun from? Oh, here we go.
Perfect. All right. I like my buns toasty.
You get toasted too.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we're going to see you next time on Princess Auto See It Work. Well, here we go.
Good dog. Need ketchup?
Well,
Anybody bring ketchup?
ketchup.
Relish?
I don't think we have it.
No.
I relish the thought of having a hot dog without ketchup.